For nearly a decade, the most wanted man on Earth vanished into thin air. The greatest intelligence apparatus in human history, satellites, intercepted phone calls, billions of dollars, and hundreds of thousands of operatives could not find one man. Then, a single phone call changed everything. It is August 2010. Somewhere in the dusty sprawl of Pakistan, a man makes a mistake. He picks up a phone. He speaks a name. That name, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, had been whispered in CIA interrogation rooms for years. Detainees at Guantanamo Bay, pressed under the harshest conditions, had described this man as a ghost, a courier, someone so trusted by Osama bin Laden that he was allowed to carry messages by hand, never by email, never by phone. Until now. The CIA had been searching for al-Kuwaiti since 2002. Operatives had cross-referenced his name across thousands of intelligence reports. They knew he existed. They simply could not find him. Then, signals intelligence, the invisible web of electronic surveillance maintained by the National Security Agency, picked up his voice. The call was brief, the location vague, but the thread had been pulled. And when you pull the right thread long enough, everything eventually unravels. Analysts at the CIA's Counterterrorism Center began the painstaking work of geolocation. They traced the signal. They cross-referenced it with surveillance photographs. They ran it against known associates. Weeks passed, then months. The intelligence community had been burned before, most catastrophically in 2001, when a CIA operative at a forward base in Khost, Afghanistan, was killed by a double agent promising information on al-Qaeda's leadership. Caution was not optional. Caution was survival. But the signal kept pointing in the same direction, north, out of the tribal frontier, away from the caves of Tora Bora where bin Laden had famously escaped in 2001, away from every assumption the intelligence community had made for 10 years. It pointed toward Abbottabad, a quiet, affluent garrison town in northern Pakistan, the kind of place where retired Pakistani military officers settled, the kind of place where nobody looked. When satellite imagery analysts finally locked onto the compound on Kakul Road, they knew immediately something was wrong. Or rather, something was conspicuously, impossibly right. The structure was enormous by local standards. Its walls rose up to 18 feet. In Washington, a small and extraordinarily tight circle of officials began receiving briefings. The director of the CIA, Leon Panetta, was convinced they had their man. Analysts, however, were more cautious. The compound's design was consistent with a high-value target seeking concealment, but there was no direct confirmation, no communication intercept with bin Laden's voice, no photograph, no DNA. President Obama began receiving detailed briefings in the winter of 2011. He sat with his national security team in the wood-paneled rooms of the White House Situation Room, staring at satellite photographs of a compound 10,000 kilometers away. The question before him was not simply whether bin Laden was inside. The question was what to do about it, and every available option carried risks that could reshape American foreign policy for a generation. A bombing strike was discussed and largely dismissed. It would have required so many munitions to guarantee the target's elimination that the resulting crater would make confirmation of bin Laden's death impossible. There would be no body, no closure. The world might never believe it. A joint operation with Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, was considered and immediately rejected. The American CIA's relationship with Pakistani's Inter-Services Intelligence, the ISI, was a labyrinth of mutual dependence and mutual suspicion. American officials had long believed that elements within the ISI maintained links to militant networks. If the Pakistanis were told about the compound, bin Laden would disappear again, if he was even there at all. That left one option: a covert helicopter raid conducted in darkness by a small team of special operations forces deep inside Pakistani territory without the knowledge or permission of the Pakistani government. It was, by any measure, an act that could be interpreted as a sovereign violation. If the Pakistani air defense system detected the aircraft, it could scramble fighter jets. American operators could be killed or captured on Pakistani soil. And if the intelligence was wrong, if bin Laden was not inside that compound, the fallout would be catastrophic. The United States would have conducted an unauthorized military operation in an allied nation based on a miscalculation. The diplomatic consequences would be severe, the political consequences unthinkable. Obama studied the options. He asked pointed questions. He ordered his team to wargame every scenario, every failure, every exit route. He met with his national security advisors repeatedly through March and April 2011. He visited the Special Operations Unit that would conduct the raid, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. He did not tell them why he was there. He simply watched them train. On the morning of April 29, 2011, President Obama convened his national security team one final time. The weather window over Abbottabad was closing. A decision had to be made. Some of his closest advisors urged caution. Vice President Joe Biden counseled against the raid. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, a man who had lived through the catastrophic failure of the 1980 Iranian hostage rescue attempt, only Panetta pushed with full confidence. Obama listened to all of them. Then he made the call. The operation was designated Operation Neptune Spear. In the early hours of May 2, 2011, local Abbottabad time, 4 modified Black Hawk helicopters lifted off from a forward operating base in Jalalabad, Afghanistan. The pilots navigated in darkness. Inside the aircraft, 24 Navy SEALs, a translator, and a military working dog named Cairo prepared for whatever was waiting behind those 18-foot walls. One helicopter experienced a hard landing inside the compound. Not a crash exactly, but an aerodynamic failure caused by a phenomenon called vortex ring state, the interaction between the helicopter's rotors and the warm, enclosed air inside the compound walls. The pilots had trained for exactly this contingency. The mission continued. Within 40 minutes, the compound was secure. 3 men were dead, including the courier Ibrahim al-Kuwaiti, the man whose phone call a year and a half earlier had set everything in motion. On the 3rd floor, behind a locked door at the end of a narrow hallway, Navy SEALs found a tall, bearded man. He was shot twice, once in the chest, once above the left eye. A woman near him had been wounded trying to shield him. Identity confirmation was immediate. The SEALs took photographs. They collected DNA samples that were rushed to a laboratory and cross-referenced against samples obtained from bin Laden's sister, who had died in Boston. The match was absolute. Osama bin Laden, the architect of the September 11th attacks, the man responsible for the deaths of nearly 3,000 Americans on a single Tuesday morning in 2001, was dead. His body was transported to the USS Carl Vinson, an aircraft carrier in the North Arabian Sea. Following Islamic funeral rites, witnessed and recorded, he was wrapped in a white sheet and slipped beneath the surface of the ocean. No grave, no shrine, no monument. The sea closed over him and offered nothing back. In Washington, President Obama addressed the nation just before midnight on Eastern Time, the first day of May in America, the second day of May in Pakistan. He stood at a podium in the East Room of the White House and spoke 11 words that ended 10 years of searching, 10 years of grief. The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden. The hunt was over, but the harder question, the one that intelligence analysts, historians, and policymakers would wrestle with for decades, had only just begun. What does a country cost to become the kind of country capable of finding one man in one compound in a town its allies didn't know it was watching? What is surrendered in the decade of surveillance, the years of enhanced interrogation, the black sites, the secret legal frameworks, the partnerships with governments whose values do not align with democratic principles? The bullet that ended bin Laden's life was precise.